So let's talk about modifying grids. So as I mentioned, as I closed the last little lesson, I guess, the modification is going to come in two parts, right? How do you change sort of what it looks like and what the features of it are? And then how do you change its position in an intelligent way? So the good thing about these grids is that it has a lot of smart properties, and we have to talk about the anatomy of this grid line first. The grid line has, let's start at the outer edge, right, the extremes. You'll notice at the bottom, if you select one of them, that it has a little checkbox, and it is checked. And at the top, it has a checkbox, and it is not checked. If you check that, then the grid head is going to pop on. Okay, so that's how you just decide which side of the grid is actually turned on. So generally, if you like them all to be on the top, or if that's your firm standard, you can turn them all on by clicking these checkboxes. It's a little bit laborious. You can't do it all at once, unfortunately. But the good thing is in project development, you set your grids like in the early stages of the project, and generally speaking, you don't have to modify them for the rest of the process. So you only have to do it once, kind of. Okay. The other thing is there are a few features about where its extents actually are. If you need to change how long these are, you can grab this little purple, well, it's blue until you hover over it, but this little purple circle, and it's going to pull those grids up and down. Now notice that it only pulled 2 grids, and they're sort of locked together. They can be locked together. All you have to do is just grab other grid groups and align them to the blue line like that. And then once you see that dashed blue line going across all of your grids, they'll all move together as well. Does that make sense? So how do you undo that? All you have to do is just check this little lock that appears, and then that one can be moved individually. And then you can lock it again by pulling it back in. Questions about that? All right. So I mentioned that there are a couple of other anatomical things here. They're really, really tiny on this screen, so pay very close attention. There's this 3D button right here. It says, when you hover over it, it says switch to 2D extents. The good thing about these grid lines is that they are a three-dimensional object, even though they're really a planar reference. So the limit of this grid, when this says 3D, is right there. If you cut a section in another view, you won't see that grid. So let me go to, let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's do it with, yeah, far clipping. I'm going to say, you guys don't have to do this. I just want to show you. Okay. So this elevation right now is only extending that far. Okay. So I'm going to go into that elevation, and you're not going to see any of those grids. Okay. If I pull the extents of those grids beyond that line, right, beyond this line right here, I go into that elevation, and those grids are now there. So it's a three-dimensional object. The other thing that you can do here is, if I'm going to pull, let me leave them up there for a second, and let's take the number 3 for instance, and I'm going to unlock that, and I'm going to pull it down a little bit. Okay, so right now it still exists beyond that plane, right? That's what you see here. Actually, let me just go like that. All right, so that's what you see there. It still exists in that view. However, if I go to that 3D toggle and I switch it to 2-dimensional extents, and I pull this thing down, right? Even though in plan it looks like it's below that line, right? I'm thinking to myself it shouldn't really be there. It shouldn't be showing an elevation, but it is, because if you select that and you see that where that little circle still lies, that's the actual 3-dimensional extents. Does that make sense? So you can, that's a feature that's built into grid lines, so you can modify them on sheet. Like when you have a really complex plan and you need to pull this one in because it's like sticking off the page. It's like that. It's a really nifty feature. So let me go back. Pull these back in. Let me turn that far clipping off. Go to no clip for now. All right. So there we are. We have our grids. And then the last visibility thing I want to show you is when you get yourself into a pickle and you've got 2 grid lines that for some reason are like right next to each other. They don't look good. you can modify those on Sheet by clicking this little break button. Anytime you see that little Z, that's a break button. So I'm going to break that, and I can actually pull that thing off to the side so it looks like that. Okay. Do I expect you to remember all of these things right now? No. But now you've got the video, and you can go back and reference it when you need it. The other thing I wanted to teach you in this segment is how to modify them and set them up intelligently so that they fit your architectural condition. So I mentioned a little bit about, I guess you can like move these things, you can copy them, you can type in the distances, but one of the most powerful features in Revit is using dimensions to your benefit. You can actually move things using a dimension string, which is pretty sick. So I'm not going to teach you everything about stylizing dimensions right now. I just want you to go through this. So type in DI, and you're going to click on each of the grid lines in succession without clicking anything else. Okay, and then in order to complete a dimension, you actually just have to click off of the dimension. That's how, you don't have to enter or anything, just click off in space somewhere. It's weird. It takes getting used to that one. Okay, so let's kind of zoom in and see what this looks like. Okay, so I've got two grids that are 24 feet and then 27 feet 11 inches and 11 and 17/32 of an inch. Okay, I obviously didn't do that very well. So the cool thing about objects in Revit and dimensions in Revit is when I click this, you notice, you can't really see it on screen, it looks black here, but you'll see it on your screen, that this dimension text shows up blue. And if I hover over it, it shows up as like a little object. And if I click it, it becomes an active typable dimension. Well, let's say I space all 5 of these things out and I just did it really fast, and now I want to go through and just kind of readjust them to be in the position I want them to be. Let's say I want them all to be 20 feet on center. So I'm going to hit 20 feet, and it moves. Then I can click the next one, and I can say 20 feet. I can click the next one. Actually, you don't even have to hit 20 because it defaults to feet. 20, and here, this one will be 20. Wow, I actually wasn't very far off for that last one.
The dialog box pops up.
Okay, I'll come check out and see. Oh, and just a final thought here on this. If you need to pop this thing back in, just drag it back to the middle and it'll be fine. Yeah, so I'll come around and just make sure that you guys are all, because there are so many little weird nuanced things that you could accidentally click or type and it'll do something different. So we're going to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. But generally, are there any questions before I come around and do that? Okay.